Bright Duty. Every student matters.
Hello, dear students. Welcome to another lecture. In this class, we are going to begin with the third unit of Class 12 Education Nagaland Board, which is Stages of Human Development. Now, in this unit, we shall learn about the stages of human development. What all are the stages that a human being has to go through in the process of development? We are going to describe the important domains and the stages. So, what are the important stages? What are the important domains of these stages? We are going to describe them. We are going to classify, the different stages of the human development. We will understand what or how important or what role does the physical, emotional, intellectual, and social development of infancy, childhood, and adolescence play. We are also going to learn about the educational significance of infancy, of childhood, adolescence in the stages of development. So this, my dear students, is what we aim to learn by the end of this unit. So without much ado, let us begin. Now, we all know one thing about human beings, and that is that we keep on changing, and the changes that take place in us are regular changes. They take place on a regular basis. They are very gradual changes that we can see. You may see a change in the human being when the human being is transitioning in life. So, since the time we are born to the time we die, there are multiple features that change in us. There are multiple changes that come over in us. So, the journey that we have from being an unborn baby, that is, from being inside the mother's womb to an adult, and then to go on to an old person, is very exciting. There are a lot of changes, there are a lot of things that are a part of it. Even if you look around yourself at somebody in a very casual manner, you will be able to identify the changes that have taken place in them. Be it the changes in their body, that is, how do they look, or the changes that take place in their mental processes, the way they think, the way they act, the way they behave. Some changes can be noticed by you immediately and can even be observed by you the moment you look at some person. While some of the changes are dependent on your heredity or the genetic factors, your genes. What genes or what have we inherited from our parents. Some changes will depend on the environment, our surroundings, the physical, around physical environment around us. A few changes will even depend on the culture that we are a part of. So basically, different cultures have different goals for the development. You know, every culture has got a different way in which the child is raised. If we, for example, on a whole, compare the Indian culture with that of the American culture, you'd be able to see a lot of differences in the way our kids are brought up as compared to the way the kids there are brought up. There the kids, ever since they step into the teenage, they are taught to be independent. They take up petty jobs such as being the newspaper delivery boy or working at some food joint, some eatery. While on the other hand, according to the Indian culture, a lot of emphasis, a lot of stress is given on education in those years. Right? So the way people are brought up according to the different cultures is again something that added to the changes in the human development. So we know that development is a continuous process. This is something that we have learned in the first unit as well as the second unit. So we know that development is a continuous process. There are a few theorists, there are a few learned, there are a few people who believe that a lot of changes take place, a lot of phenomenal changes take place in the human beings in the stages of your development. And if you look at the entire process of development, if you are able to monitor the process of development, you will be able to analyze the way one grows. So, this is what a lot of theorists believe in. You know, the theorists or these psychologists have even pointed out that the changes or the different stages that we have in development, there is not something very drastic, change in them. It is not that the moment we step from the first stage to the second stage, there is going to be a very significant change that will take place in us. No, there is no such sharp change that will take place. But because every stage has a feature of its own, they are going to prepare you for the next stage. So every stage acts as a foundational stage for you, which prepares you at the grassroots level so that you may be able to step on to the next level in a comfortable manner. Now, there are a few theorists who have also suggested that there are stages even within the areas of development. One of such psychologists is Piaget. Now, according to him, there are stages in cognitive development. According to Freud, there are changes in the psychosexual development of a child as well. By cognitive development, we understand the changes that take place in our intellectual abilities. And according to Freud, the way we advance, the psychosexuality, the mental features, and the physical changes that take place in us, they also have got a lot of stages in themselves. So, the entire lifespan can be classified with the help of these three pictures. This is how the growth of a human being takes place from a child, from a baby rather, to a child, to a boy, or to a man, to an adult. So, every span or lifespan of a human being is divided into various stages. And we know very well that whatever development takes place in a human being is always a gradual and a continuous process. And every human being has to go through these stages from being a baby to being a child to being a man or to being an adult. So basically, what are the stages of a human change that takes place in the human being? We have first the prenatal period. Prenatal period means that period which ranges from conception, that is, from being inside the womb to the time you are born. So the entire duration that a child develops inside the mother's womb is known as the prenatal period. And the prenatal period is divided into 3 stages. We first have the germinal period, that is from the first 2 weeks of conception. When a mother conceives a baby, the first 2 weeks of conception are known as the germinal period. Then we have the embryonic period, that is the 3 weeks. First 2 weeks are germinal period. Third week onwards begins the embryonic period, which ends up to the 8th week. Then we have the fetal period, and fetal period is from the 9th week till the time the child is born, till the time the baby is born, that is known as the fetal period. Then we have the postnatal period. Now, this is very easy for us to understand now that we know what is prenatal, that is before the birth of the child. Postnatal means after the birth of the child. So, once the child is born, the entire duration of the child's life can be divided into various stages again. The first of which is infancy, from the birth of the child to 2 years. So the first 2 years of a child are known as infancy, and that is why till the time a child is 2 years of age, a child is known as an infant, right? Then we have childhood. Now, childhood also has early childhood and later childhood. Now, first of all, childhood means 3 years to 12 years, or till the time the child reaches the onset of puberty. Nowadays, it is believed, according to the psychologists, that the children reach puberty by the age of 11. Okay, on the basis of the developmental changes that have been observed in the children, this is what the psychologists believe. So from 3 years till the time the child reaches the puberty, that is known as childhood. And as I said, that childhood can also be divided into early childhood and later childhood. Early childhood is 3 to 6 years, and later childhood is 7 years until puberty. So childhood in totality is 3 years till puberty. Of this, we have early childhood, that is 3 years to 6 years is early childhood, and 7 years to the time you reach your puberty is known as the later childhood. Then we have adolescence. Adolescence is 12 to 19 years, or when you reach puberty, you become an adolescent. This is what the psychologists believe in. So from puberty to 19 years, you are an adolescent, or till the time you reach your maturity level, you are an adolescent. Adolescence also can be divided further into early adolescence and later adolescence. Early adolescence is 12 to 16 years, and later adolescence is 17 to 19 years. Okay. Then after adolescence, the next stage is adulthood. Adulthood is from 20 years till death is adulthood. Again, adulthood is further subdivided into early adulthood and later adulthood. Early adulthood is 21 to 40 years, and later adulthood is 41 to 60 years. That is your later adulthood. And last comes the old age, which is 61 years till the time one dies. That is the old age. So these are all the stages in which the entire human life can be divided. Now, why do we divide the entire human life into stages? Because this is going to make it easier for the psychologists or the theorists to study the human beings in depth. So this makes the entire process very easy. So the stages that we have just discussed above, these stages are recognized across the globe. These are universally recognized, not only in India, but across the globe. These stages are recognized. Although how soon or how late you reach your puberty or your adulthood or your childhood may depend on the cultural factors, may even depend on the environmental factors. So that may certainly vary, but on the whole, the stages that we have discussed so far are going to be the same. Now, when I talk about the cultural factors, again, as I said, that on the basis of the cultural factors, a child may reach adolescence early, and there may be a few children who reach adolescence a bit late. So the entire difference is going to arise and is going to depend on the culture that you are born and brought up in. On the top of it, your old age is also going to depend on how medically fit you are, how healthy you are. Then if you have been through any sort of surgeries in the past, that will also depend and will decide your medical, your old age. And on the basis of the same, your life expectancy is decided. Life expectancy or the lifespan expectancy means the average number of years for which a person is expected to live. So in India now, because the medical treatment, because of the better medical facilities, the lifespan expectancy has grown to 65 years. Okay. So that varies on how well you take care of yourself, plus how well the medical facilities take care of you. So now we know that what are the different stages of infancy. We have three different stages of infancy. We have medical, legal, and psychological stages of infancy. First, we have medical. What do we understand by that? An infant refers to a person who is incapable of speaking and therefore is helpless. So, infancy, as we discussed above, can be further subdivided into three stages. The first one is medical stage of infancy, in which the infant is not able to speak and is therefore helpless, is not in a position to do anything. The second stage of infancy is the legal stage of infancy, where a person or an infant is regarded to be an infant until he or she reaches the age of 18. There are a few lands or a few places wherein, according to the law, a minor, that is a child who has not reached the age of 18, is considered to be an infant. All right. And then the third thing that will decide your infancy is psychological also. There are a few places which refer to the first 2 years of life as infancy. Okay, so these are the three broad categories in which the psychologists across the world classify infancy on the basis of their medical or the fact that they are not able to speak. And till the time a child is not speaking, that child is known as an infant first. Till the time the child is 2 years of age, he is known as an infant. And in a few places, the first 18 years of the child's life are covered under infancy only. So these are the different stages of infancy. Now, Elizabeth B. Hurlock, who's a very famous psychologist, she termed infancy that ranges from birth till 2 weeks. So, according to her, infancy ranges only until the first 2 weeks of a child's birth. And she introduced the term babyhood from the period that extends from the end of the second week after the end of the second year of life. So, Elizabeth B. Hurlock has further subdivided, or she's found a new term to be incorporated in infancy. According to her, the first 2 weeks are infancy, and then third week onwards, the child enters into babyhood, and that goes on till the second year, the end of the second year of the child's life. So, in general, infancy refers to the period of development that begins as soon as the child is born and ends by the end of 18 months to 2 years of a child. So, this is the average or the general duration of infancy. Now, let us try and understand the changes that have taken place in infancy, in the later periods or in the current scenario. Now, although infancy comprises of only 2% of your entire lifespan, but it is regarded to be the most significant and the busiest times for the development of a child. It is believed by the psychologists that a child is born, a child lives up to the age of, on an average, 65 years. There are different stages that a child goes through, but the busiest and the stage in which the child develops the most is the infancy, and that is why infancy is regarded to be the most significant stage of a child's development. A newborn baby or somebody who's born, who is there in the first month of their life, basically, the moment they step into their life, the only skills that they are empowered with is their motor skills. They are able to interact with the people. And how do they interact with the people? Just by listening to what the people are saying, the sound of the people, reacting to them by the movement of their hands, by the movement of their feet, by making certain sounds, which are obviously very difficult for one to interpret. So these are the motor skills that a child is born with. By the time a child reaches the end of infancy, that is, by the time the child is nearing the end of 2 years, a child becomes sociable. He or she learns how to interact and understand and recognize the people. A child becomes self-assertive. That is, the child is able to express what is there, what the child is going through. If the child is happy, the child will laugh. If the child is not happy, the child will cry. If the child is sleepy, the child will sleep, and so on and so forth. So, by the time the infancy is about to come to an end, the child starts developing a purpose in life and, is empowered with some skills which are going to enable the child to better understand the human abilities and the human language. So, over a period of time, or over the last century, over the last 10 years, over the last 100 years, 10 years basically, there has been a significant change in the infancy. At one time, it was believed that the newborn was not competent with the world. According to William James, who was a psychologist then, he believed that infancy was a stage where a child was always going through a lot of confusion in one's life. But according to the recently developed methods and according to the recent researchers and the tests that they have done on the babies, they have come up with the fact that the capacity, the capability of the babies have actually changed in the current scenario. It is accepted now that the infants, from the time they come out of the mother's womb, they are skilled, they are capable, and there are multiple complex abilities that they are empowered with. Something that was not expected out of the early infants. And that is why you can see, we say that with each passing time, the children are becoming smarter as compared to the previous generation because of what they are born with, because of the first and the initial stage in their development, that is the infancy. Now, let us look at some of the general ideas that are delivered about infancy, the general beliefs of the people about infancy. First is the age of dependence. Now, we all know that infancy is that stage of human life where a child is totally dependent on the caretaker and is dependent on the other person to fulfill whatever are their needs. They cannot ask for it on their own. Second, infancy is the age where the growth and the changes take place in the child at a very rapid level. It is that stage in the human development where one can see physical as well as psychological growth taking place in a human child. The movements in the child's bodies are more coordinated, as I told you. If they are happy, you would be able to see it from their movements. If they are sad, that will also be very much evident to you. And also, an infant is able to recognize and identify the people around them and the objects around them as well. We as have discussed that infancy is the foundational age of human development. It is this period of time that the behavior, the pattern, the attitude, the emotions of an infant are established. So this is the stage when you start establishing these qualities or these features in yourself. Also, this is a very shy age, since when you are an infant, your world is very much limited to your family and to only a handful of people. You are not comfortable with being around the strangers or unfamiliar faces and surroundings. You don't feel comfortable at that age. Infancy is certainly an age where one needs to be very careful of with respect to the children, because it is at this age that the children are more prone to the illnesses and are more prone to accidents. Infant mortality rate is very high, and that is one of the reasons why it is said that until the age of 2 years, a child needs to be taken care of very well. So that is when the maximum care is to be given to the child. It is also a very appealing age. Appealing age because obviously adults, even the older children, they find the infants to be the cutest, the nicest and the most appealing, people, I would say, of all the stages. Once the child grows up, there are multiple changes that will take place in the child, but it is an infant that is most loved by the people because of the way they depend on you, because of the way they can be easily managed by you. Therefore, this stage is very much appealing by the others. Now comes the physical development that takes place in a human body. Now we know that an infant is not only going to grow physiologically or psychologically, there are bodily changes that will also take place in an infant. The physical development, the body will also grow with respect to height, with respect to weight. During the first year of a life, there are more changes that will take place in the child's body as compared to any other age or any other stage of life. Now, if we talk specifically about the height of the children, now children who are of the same age, we all know, have different height, right? My age people, when I would come across, or when you would come across your friends who are more or less of your age only, you can see that there is a lot of difference in your height, right? But the pattern in which your growth or your height increases is almost the same. So the height may be different, but the pattern of growth is similar to almost everybody. According to research, an average Indian child at the time he or she is born measures between 17 to 21 inches. After 1 year, that grows to 28 to 30 inches. By the end of 2 years, the child is 32 to 34 inches. So 32 to 34 inches is almost double the size that the child was born with. For the first year, the length or the height that the child gains is again a very important factor, and therefore there is an instrument which is known as infantometer. So the length of the child which is recorded in the first year depends on the way you lie down. Okay, how you lie down, this is how your length is measured, and the instrument for measuring that is known as infantometer. And therefore, it is said that it is in the first year of the child that we can measure the length of the child, but not the height. When the child is lying down, you measure the length of the child, that is not the height. And that is why the first year you can know the length, but not the height of the child. Now comes the weight. Now, an average Indian newborn baby weighs somewhere between 2.5 to 3.25 kgs. Now, according to the doctors, a loss of weight in a newborn is very much normal. Okay, it says that by 7 to 10 days, the child is going to get back to the normal weight and is going to regain the lost weight. And not only will regain the weight that has been lost, but will also have an add-on to the initial weight that the child was born with. Now, by the age of 4 months, the child is able to double his or her weight. And at the end of 1 year, the child is triple the weight that he or she was born with. During the second and the third year, the child gains 1.25 to 2 kgs annually. So every year there is an addition of 1.25 to 2 kgs to the child's weight. Now comes the next thing, that is the development of the bones. We know the changes that take place in the height of the child We know the changes that take place in the weight of the child. Now let us discuss about the changes that take place in the bones of the child. So bone development also is a very important aspect of growth. And when we talk about the bone size, there is a change in the entire bodily composition that we take into account. So the body, changes its composition. There is a concept in science which is known as ossification or hardening of the bones. So, ossification or the hardening of the bones is what takes place during infancy. When a child is born, when a baby is born, the baby is handled in a very careful manner because of the delicate bones that they are born with. But with the passage of time, the bones begin to get hard. That is known as ossification of the bones. So as I told you that at the initial stages, the bones of a baby can change shape, can be deformed because they are very soft. The shape of your head is basically something that the mothers and the parents look out for the most, because when the child sleeps in one position, one notices a flat head, and therefore one does not let the baby sleep in one position for a very long time. Neither do they let the child sleep on their stomach for a very long time. Therefore, it is advisable that the babies, the position of the babies needs to be changed after every 2 to 3 hours because of the soft bones that they have at that time. Then comes the development of the teeth. Now, teeth begin developing in the jaws of the baby during the third or the fourth month of the prenatal life. You understand? Even when the child is inside the mother's womb, the third or the fourth month of that duration, the child starts to develop their teeth in the jaw. But they don't appear till the time the child is 5 or 6 months old. So the teeth are very much there in the jaws, but the teeth will not turn up, they will not come out until the baby is 5 to 6 months old. And then the rate at which the child grows or gets a tooth is one tooth a month until the child is 2 years of age. We know what is a milk teeth. We know what is the concept of a permanent teeth. So milk teeth is also known as temporary teeth. So out of the 20 temporary teeth that the child has, 16 appear by the age of 2 years. So 16 teeth the child will have by the age of 2 years. So this is the development that will take place in the teeth. Now comes the development that takes place in the nervous system of the child or the eye muscles. Now, during infancy, the changes that take place in the child's nervous system are very immature because of the new cells that are developing or that are forming at that age. Basically what happens is that when a child is born, there are very few cells which are present, and cells continue to be formed with each passing day, with each passing stage. So the nervous system is very immature at the time of a child's birth and keeps on strengthening with each passing day. When the child is able to get and derive the appropriate nutrients and everything, the cells develop. Similarly, the eye muscles also are very well coordinated, and an infant's eye muscles can differentiate between colors. So you see, until the age of 2 years, the child is able to distinguish between the colors. Now comes the social development. So far, we've discussed about the physical development that will take place in an infant with respect to the change in height, weight, teeth, bone, eye muscles, nervous system. Now let us talk about the social development of an infant. We know that an infant is only and only, accustomed to the home. The immediate environment that an infant is offered is that of the home. And therefore, the kind of environment the child gets at home during their infancy is going to lay a very strong foundation for the development of their later behavior as well as their attitude. And that is why the psychologists believe that a happy, a conducive environment is going to make it better for the infants to adjust to the environment or to adjust to everybody in a better manner. It is believed that the infants who are provided with a happy environment, they are able to grow conducively as compared to those infants who cry a lot. The infants who cry a lot tend to become more aggressive when they are grown up. So, infant, when a child is born, he or she is not going to be social, right? A child is only and only concerned about itself. A baby is concerned about itself. It is only concerned with whether the child is able to get enough food, is able to get enough sleep or not. An infant cannot share his or her toys with the others. An infant wants to have everything for himself or herself. That is why you must have noticed that if you take away a toy from a baby, the baby will start crying. Because external interference is something that the infants are not accustomed to, that the infants are not adapted to. Also, the infants are dependent on the adults for the satisfaction of their needs. Whatever they want, be it food, milk, toy, love, whatever is their requirement, they are always dependent on an adult. Even for the emotional satisfaction, if they feel to be comforted, they need somebody to be with them all the time. During the first month, the infant does not know how to differentiate between the different human voices as well as the external voices that the child listens to. During the second month, the baby learns to recognize the sounds of the human beings and gives smiles, starts to smile at people. During the third month, a baby learns to recognize his or her mother and feels happy when she is around and unhappy when she is not there with the child. During the fourth month, the baby knows and starts to recognize the people who he or she is surrounded by the maximum time, and therefore they start to recognize the human faces. And that is why when a stranger comes near a baby, they start to cry. They become very irritable in nature. During the fifth month, a baby reacts differently to your smiles. When you smile, the baby will smile. When you scold, the baby is even able to identify your scolding and therefore learns to identify, distinguish between the friendly voices as well as the angry voices. During the sixth month, the child is able to recognize the people who are known to him, you know, the people who are a part of his or her family, and meets them with a smile. And when the child comes across a stranger, the fear, the intimidation can be very well seen on the child's face. During the 8th and the 9th month, the child tries to speak. You know, there are different sounds that the child produces. There are different gestures, the hand movements, the movements of the feet that the child tries to do in order to express himself or herself. Between the 10th and the 12th months, the child plays with his or her own image. That is when the concept of looking into the mirror and getting happy when you see yourself starts to take place. And that is why the children who are 10 or 12 months old, they love to look at their image, their reflection in the mirror, and they even kiss themselves in the mirror. At the 12th month, the child can actually prevent himself or herself from doing things, you know, in response, the activities that the child does not want to do, and will become a member of the family. The child will do only the things that he wants to. And if the child does not want to do anything, the child is not going to do it, irrespective of how hard you try. From 13th to the 18th month, the interests of an infant are going to shift. A child would not only need the toys but would also need people or children to play with. And between 20 to 24 months, a child will try and give you support in your routine activities. For example, this is the age when the child wants to dress himself or herself up. They want to eat their own food. They want to bathe themselves independently. So these, my dear students, were the stages that take place of the social development of a child. So far, we've learned about the different stages of development, namely the prenatal stages, the postnatal stages in which there was infancy, adolescence, childhood, old age. We learned about infancy, and we are discussing about the different stages of development of an infant. We talked about the physical changes, we talked about the social changes. Now let us talk about the emotional development that takes place in an infant. So, when a child is born, the emotions that the child is born with are not clear, and they keep on changing when the child grows. So, with the growth of the child, the emotions of the child also keep on changing. They become clearer and they are able to be understood by the other person with ease. So, what are the different emotional characteristics that an infant displays? First is anger. So, even when the child is not able to speak, the movements, the way the child does something, when the child is not able to understand anything, the child screams, the child kicks its arms and legs, the child moves its arms, the child jumps up and down, and so on and so forth to express his or her anger. Then we have fear. Anything which is not expected by the child, or which is sudden, which is different from what the child is used to, it leads to being, to the child being afraid of. Then we have a feeling, the emotion of curiosity. Anything which is new, anything which is unusual for the child will always make the child want to know more about it. And they are able to express their curiosity through the expressions on their faces. Joy, happiness, obviously. When a child is physically happy, the child is mentally happy and healthy, the child is going to be a joyful baby. And the child will express his or her joy with the help of a smile, with the help of a laugh, with the help of the different sounds that the child makes, the gurgles, the shouts, and even the body movements that make it very evident to the onlooker that the child is happy. Affection, the child is able to, or an infant is able to express his or her affection onto the family members for the toys, for the pets, and that is why, or that is when the child's affection grows and they are able to express it by hugging, by just patting onto the child's head or patting onto the child's back or shoulders will stimulate a child's affection. And kissing the child is obviously the most obvious way of showing how much you love the child. So, what are the different emotions of the child as the child, grows in life? Now, at 3 months, the child is able to show excitement, distress when the child is not happy with something, that is also known, and when the child is happy, that is also. At 6 months, the child is able to show excitement, unhappiness, happiness, fear for something, as well as the anger for something can be shown. At 12 months, again, excitement, happiness, unhappiness, fear, anger. Other than that, elation and affection. Elation means over happiness, and affection towards somebody and from somebody can be felt and experienced by the child. At 18 months, the child can experience the emotions that we've learned above. In addition to that, the child can also feel jealousy. So it is by the age of 18 months that the child starts to feel jealous. 24 months, there is jealousy and there is joy. So jealousy and joy will continue until the 24 months and there. Now comes the intellectual, also known as the mental development of the children. So, according to Piaget, who's again a very famous psychologist, this stage, that is the infancy, is basically the sensory motor stage and plays a very important role in the mental development of the child. It is believed that it is at this age that the child is able to explore the things around him or her with the help of his senses. So the child at the age of infancy learns to explore the things around them by the help of their sense organs. How? By looking at things, by listening to things, by smelling things, by testing whatever come their way. They try to discover, their curiosity, as we've just learned above, that when child is infant, the child is very curious to know about new things. So the curiosity aspect of the child is brought to the fore by the questions that the child asks: who, what, why. Then the child associates, relates the different ideas with the objects and the situations, which further lead to the development of concepts in the child. The child, it is at the stage of an infant that the child knows the concept of heavy and light. Okay, we know the time. The child has a body clock. The child knows it is night and the child has to wake up and trouble the parents, and when it is morning, the child sleeps peacefully. The child knows about himself and herself. That is why the child cries when he or she has a problem. By loving itself, by being funny, by smiling, by laughing. These are all the ideas that the child develops at the stage of infancy. Now comes your childhood. Now we know that during the childhood, all the things around us play a very important role. The physical environment that we are exposed to, the social environment or the social changes that will take place both within the child and also around the child, emotional changes that the child goes through, as well as the intellectual, the cognitive abilities of the child develop. So, what are the main characteristics of childhood? First is the physical development. Now, when the child enters the childhood, what all things take place with respect to the physical development? The child starts to showcase growth, which is slow, but it is continuous in nature. The development also is very continuous and is very slow. So, in childhood or at the stage of childhood, both the growth as well as the development, the physical growth and development of the child is very slow, but it is continuous and uniform in nature. Now, by 5 years, the height of the child becomes double the height that the child was born with, and the same is the weight. The weight of the child is 5 times the birth weight of the child. So, this is with respect to the height or weight. The arms and the legs of the child becomes long, they becomes more flexible. The hand and the feet also begin to grow. The trunk of the child that becomes long, the entire spinal cord, your neck, everything becomes long. It becomes slim. Your neck is longer now. Your chest becomes broad. The abdomen, the stomach of the child becomes flat. By the time the child completes the age of 4, the brain of the child is 80% of its final weight. So, whatever is the final weight of a human brain, 80% of it is there inside the child by the time the child completes 4 years of age. 10% is added by the time he or she completes 8 years of his age. So by the time the child turns 8, 90% of the brain weight is already there. The bones are going to become strong, and so is the different part of the body. Not only the bones, but the different parts of the child's body will also gain strength. Now, by the end of the 5th year, the permanent teeth of the child will begin to appear. That obviously takes a long time. The nervous system of the child, what goes inside the brains of the child, they show a very rapid growth during the first 4 years. So the growth is not slow, but a very rapid growth in the first 4 years. The muscles become large and strong and heavy, as a result of which the children look thin. This stage in sexual terms is known as the latency period, which means the sexual energies of the child at childhood are very dormant, they are inactive. But by the end of this stage, they come out with a great force. So the sexual changes start to take place in the children by the age of this stage. Then comes social development. The child learns to imitate, learns to cooperate with people, learns to express sympathy and empathy for the people, is able to adjust in a social environment, learns to share, is attached to the people and shows that attachment as well. Unsocial patterns can also be seen in the children during this stage. That means the aggressive nature, the selfish nature, the egoistic and the self centered nature, the partial nature, and the difference that the children basically relate to with respect to the different gender, that can also be noticed at this stage. It is at this stage that the child learns about freedom and even wishes for it, and is very satisfied with doing his or her own work. They don't want anybody to do their work and want everything to be done by themselves. It is at this stage that the child shows an interest in peer group, and that is when they are more interested to be with their friends rather than being with their parents or being with their family members. They become a very active member of the peer group, and it is at this stage, that the term gang age is introduced. Gang, the children learn and they make a gang, they make a group of students, they make a group of friends among themselves, and that is very much so at this stage only, does not exist prior to it or later. This stage, the child believes in being loyal, in being true and faithful, and therefore very much agrees to the values and to the rules that are maintained by the group that he or she belongs to. There is a sort of difference that the children can find between girls and boys at this age. They think that there has to be a separate group on the basis of the gender. So you would always see the girls together and the boys together at this stage, because they believe that the interests, the habits, the attitude, the behavior of both the genders are different, and therefore there is always a segregation, a separate group that can be seen. The interests and the values of the peer group, the friend circle, can very much be seen in the children, and that at times clashes with the values that are imparted to this children, to this age group by the teachers and by the parents. Because the child at this stage wants to be known and wants to be accepted in his or her group, and at the same time the child wants to be loved by the teacher, by the parents, but the ideology of the two are always going to clash. So this dilemma can very well be seen at this stage. Then comes emotional development. This period is the period when the child learns to have a control over himself or herself, is stable, there is no aggression, or there are no extreme emotions that can be seen in the children at this stage. The child learns to hide their feelings and knows how to express their emotions in the manner which is socially acceptable and approved. Their emotional behavior is not at all, guided, or their emotional behavior does not or do not change because of what is there within them. It is not because of their instinct, it is not because of their third or their senses, but it is because of a rationale. They have a proper ideology behind what and how they are doing. Whatever emotions they express, they have a reason behind that, a very explicit reason behind that. And it is at this stage that the child learns to be afraid of things. They try to repress their feelings. They learn how to express their sentiments. They know how to be religiously involved. They develop patriotism at this stage. They develop love towards their own culture, towards their own, religion, and for their own dressing and for their own language and things. And such developments or such sentiments are going to lead a child to develop a better character, to form a better character. Then comes the intellectual development. Now, we know that intellectual development refers to the changes that will take place in the mental process of a child. What all mental changes take place in the child become a part of the intellectual development, and the changes that take place in the mental processes of a child will begin as soon as the child is born and are going to stay with you till the time you die. There are different, things that will take place in you with respect to your intellectual development. Your concepts are going to get better. You develop a better language, you develop a better memory, your reasoning skills, your thinking skills, your logical skills, your intelligence, your imagination, your power to visualize things gets better and better. Okay? The child is very curious, as we've learned and discussed earlier at this stage, and there are multiple questions, a plethora of questions that the child will ask from his or her parents, and that is why this stage is also known as questioning age or an exploratory age. Explore. The word exploratory is derived from explore, so the child explores new things. It is at this stage that the child develops the reflex actions, knows how to instinctively react to something. The child's interest in number grows. The child develops an interest in reading short stories, likes to spend time in learning about the history and in visiting new places. It is at this stage when the memory of the child increases. Now, at 6 years, a child is capable of distinguishing between what is right and what is left. Okay, so the directions, the right and left, are known to the children. Up to the age of 13, up to 13 to 14, objects can be counted by them, and the simple basic problems can also be solved by them. At 7 years, the child learns to distinguish between two objects. So there are two things in front of a child of the age 7. He or she will be able to distinguish or differentiate between them. At 8 years, the child is able, in a position, to repeat a sentence which contains 16 to 17 words. 9 years means the child is conscious about day, about the time, about the date, is able to know something about the money also, 5 rupees, 10 rupees, 20 rupees, and learns a new concept very easily. At 10 years, the child is able to point out the mistakes in the short sentences when spoken in front of them, and can repeat 60 to 70 words in 3 minutes. So this is the development that takes place. At 11 years, a child can get to know the similarity as well as the difference between things, can make a comparison between two things, can even make out the difference between a boy and a girl, a man and a woman, as well as can learn about the birds and animals. At 12 years, a child can point out, can make out the reason behind something, and can also provide an explanation. That is why if mistakenly they break something or there is a problem that happens because of them, then they are able to give an excuse and a reason behind what has happened and why did that happen with them.